Our next guest is the definition of a triple threat. Actor, singer, cruise director. Michael Shapiro. I've got the CD to prove it. Michael, welcome.
Hi, nice seeing you.
Now, we have to confess, we've met before.
Yes.
I've actually heard you perform, but I have, as all the viewers of this show know, worked on ships, been around the world by ships. I love it. I never actually met a cruise director who was also a legitimate actor-singer.
Oh, really?
You're an amazing talent.
Oh, thank you.
You can put that on your resume. I said it right here on the air.
Oh, okay.
Tell me about the CD. When I heard you perform, I didn't know you had a CD.
Well, I work on the ship, the Paul Gauguin, and many times guests would say, do you have a CD of your show? I perform 2 or 3 nights a week on the ship. So I put a compilation of all my songs I did on the cruise ship at that time with my band. I flew to the Philippines, recorded with my great band Siglo, and in 1 week we recorded this CD, and I sell it on the ship and also on cdbaby.com.
cdbaby.com. So people can buy this.
Michael Shapiro,
yeah. cdbaby.com.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking before the cameras went hot about how you came to love and be aboard ships. And I can't believe that someone knows something about ships that I didn't. Well, what was your inspiration?
My inspiration to work on ships was the Gale Storm show. In the early 60s, I guess they were repeats from a 50s show.
Gayle, Gale Storm.
Yeah, she's a huge star. And she had a show where she played a cruise director.
So this is long before Julie on the Love Boat.
Long before Julie on the Love Boat.
Yeah.
And that gave me my first introduction and my first excitement about being at sea. Also, my grandmother traveled every year on the Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth, the Michelangelo, all the wonderful grand ships of the 1940s and 50s.
Did you ever travel with her?
I used to ask her all the time. She never would invite me. She said, you're too young, you wouldn't appreciate it. I'm like, yes, I would. I really would.
So what is this? I remember Julie on the Love Boat. You remember Gale Storm. And now, of course, cruise directors who are women are kind of unusual. But, I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, I don't want to out you here on the show, but, I mean, I don't think I've ever met a cruise director that wasn't gay.
Well, there are. Yeah,
it's got to be a small club, though.
It's a small club, but most cruise directors tend to be gay. One, because you have to be away from your family.
Yeah. And
also, we're magical.
Yes.
And also, we tend to be entertainers.
Yeah.
Naturally. Yeah. Charisma, all those things. And I've always had a thirst for travel. And being an entertainer in New York City most of my life, in musical theater, I would take a cruise ship job as an entertainer when I couldn't get a summer stock job. So I wound up, going on the Royal Odyssey for a summer or the Old Sitmar Fair Sea for a winter or something like that. And I would do ships every 3 or 4 years when I couldn't get work out of New York.
Right. Now, your inspiration for going to sea with all your multifaceted talents was the Gale Storm show.
Yeah.
What got you on stage?
My mother was a singer, entertainer. My uncle was an actor, stage manager for CBS for 40 years. So I just grew up around New York City and all that kind of theatrical thing. My uncle was stage manager for the Ed Sullivan, Judy Garland, Gary Moore. So I was always around that.
There was no way you were not going to be on a ship, be a cruise director, or come out heterosexual. Not with that past. It's just, it's impossible.
It's very true. Who would have done my mother's hair and makeup?
Exactly. All kidding aside, I think people who don't understand the cruise industry think it's a great, glamorous, and exciting job, which it can be, but it's also, I always tell people it's the hardest work I ever had. You work 7 days a week, 27 hours a day, 4 or 5 months at a time. When do you relax?
When you go home. So, basically my schedule is I start work around 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I finish around midnight. I do that 7 days a week. I'll get like a 1 or 2 hour break in the afternoon. Luckily, I'm in French Polynesia, so my break is bicycling around Bora Bora, going to the beach in Moorea, wonderful things like that. So I feel very fortunate. But no, it's exhausting, and you have to have a certain kind of stamina. You have to be the kind of person that can be available all the time, emotionally available. You can't have a bad hair day. You can't need your alone time. You really have to be a person who loves people. You have to be like the ultimate people person.
Yeah, but is it hard sometimes? Does it? I know you have a partner. You must miss him, and it must get hard.
It's difficult, but you just do it. Like anything in life. And no one wants to hear me complain about seeing Bora Bora twice a week. No one wants to hear me complain about being in Tahiti. So it's a beautiful location. I always say it's great office space. It is hard work, but it's a beautiful view. And What's nice about the Paul Gauguin, being a small ship of 300 people, I can really have personalized service for everyone. And I can know everyone's needs and desires, and the entire staff on the ship work that way.
Right.
I have 8 Tahitian women who are my staff.
Les Gauguin.
Les Gauguin, and it's very rewarding mentoring them. They're young women who have never been in a Western environment, and I'm kind of Henry Higgins them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been aboard the Paul Gauguin. I loved it, obviously. And I was surprised at how, I mean, this sounds like a cliche, but unspoiled, in a sense, some of those ports are. And when you meet some of the locals who live in French Polynesia specifically, these are not people who are going to the Starbucks down the street or to McDonald's, because there's not a Starbucks and there's not a McDonald's. It seems to me to be about the most remote place you can go.
It is one of the most remote places you can still go and not be inundated by modern life. It's like Hawaii, I think, before World War II.
And it's purposeful. I mean, Polynesia...
The French government keeps it that way. They want boutique tourism, but they do not want mass tourism. And the people don't want it, and it can't support it. The infrastructure can't support it.
I noticed something when my husband Alfredo and I were on the Gauguin earlier in 2011. We saw this group of people. I couldn't tell if they were men or women, but androgynous would be the way to describe them.
The mahus?
The mahus in some of the ports in Polynesia. And I said, are those drag queens? Are they members of the transgender community? And I was told that in a sense they are kind of an indigenous LGBT group there. Talk to me about that.
I never heard of it put that way, yes, but yes.
I think they're a fascinating group.
In ancient Polynesian culture, you always had certain boys who were brought up as girls. They were indoctrinated as women.
Always. This is before the Western
This is before the
influence.
Westerners. And mainly, the legend goes, they're really not sure the exact origin. The thought is that if all the men went off to war and died, they'd have a few leftover guys with a little sperm left in them that they could suddenly turn into men.
Yeah.
So, kind of like a reserve
fleet.
A reserve fleet if everyone winds up dying in a battle.
Yeah.
But what it is they, in modern day, it's survived all these millennium, is they take either the most effeminate child in the family or the youngest member of the family, and they indoctrinate this child as a girl. He wears a dress. He is called she. It's a complete transgender situation.
Yes, and at least, and I mean, again, my perception was just 2 weeks, but we saw it again and again in a way that was, I hate to use this word, but it appeared perfectly normal.
There is no judgment in French Polynesia. French Polynesians do not judge anyone. There is no racism. There is no sexism. It's remarkable that even with all the Western influences, they have this mahu culture and also ray culture, which is a transgender person. Rays tend to be a more modern sense of what we would consider a transvestite, or a transgender person who would have a sex change operation. But then you have these mahus, and it's not about being pretty. It's about taking the feminine role in a masculine society. And you'll have a 300-pound guy in a muumuu with Lee press-on nails and flip-flops.
Yeah, I saw her.
It's not pretty.
Yeah.
It's not about being pretty.
Yeah.
It's about giving back to the culture, and that person takes care of the grandmother and grandfather, the young children. They teach young boys how to have sex.
So it's family-oriented.
It's family-oriented, and it's completely acceptable. And there's no judgment.
So sexual guilt is not a big part of Polynesian culture?
Oh, not at all. No.
Yeah, what is it you said? They're very free with their bodies.
Yeah, they're very, very loving.
Yeah. What has been the response of some of the passengers on Paul Gauguin?
Well, people
have you ever had a negative
Not many.
response?
I mean, whenever you travel in the world, I've been all around the world, and
How many countries now?
62. I thought it was 90, but Facebook told me it was 62.
I got it.
So you can't be in judgment. If you spend your life traveling, being in judgment, you should stay home, because you have to accept people exactly as they are. I find most people who travel on my ship and to French Polynesia are very well-traveled people. It's one of those bucket list places. You don't just go to Tahiti usually. It's become more and more people do, but it tends to be a place towards the end of your list, not towards the beginning of your list. Right. And people tend to be much more open and understanding in their travels.
I remember when I worked in the cruise industry in the late 90s, I wouldn't say that it was homophobic, but it certainly wasn't gay embracing. I mean, there were LGBT cruises, and they were usually on a small boat that was on its last propeller. And now
That's not true anymore.
It ain't true. A friend of mine just took an LGBT cruise on board the Oasis of the Seas.
6,000 people.
I mean, 6,000 homosexuals at sea. I mean, wow. So a lot of money's being made.
Big money.
Have you ever run into homophobia in the cruise industry?
No, I never have. I mean,
and do you think it ever was homophobic? Do you think that that's a correct perception on my part?
I mean, I think prior to the 70s and 80s, maybe, when you had the old ship captains with the Greek, big gray beards, or it depends if you're on a Greek ship, an Italian ship, a French ship. Polynesian is a French ship originally, and they're much more open-minded, much more thinking about the greater whole of people, and like show business, without gay people, there wouldn't be show business. Many times you want to say the same thing with the cruise industry, because usually the cruise directors, the hotel directors, the F&B people, the entertainers, the gay person has really influenced all of cruise industry.
Have you ever thought about the fact that an openly gay Westerner can have sometimes a good effect maybe on other countries that find themselves in the cruise industry from countries and parts of the world that aren't very gay friendly? For instance, when I worked in the industry, there were 63 nationalities in that crew, which people think I'm making it up.
No.
I mean, it was extraordinary. And some were from Eastern Europe. There were some from the Arab world. And I know sometimes just kind of being openly gay was confrontational to them. Do you think sometimes that you're an ambassador for?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it's a real United Nations when you work on a ship. I work with around 25 nationalities, and they either have to be willing to be open-minded or they have to go home. They accept, the cruise line accepts no sexism or racism, and you have to be completely open-minded. And I think it really does help. I think it really does make it much more acceptable, and they'll go home and they have an open mind for their own culture.
In our last few moments, talk to me about your acting and singing work. When you're not aboard ship, where are you singing and dancing?
Well,
singing and acting, I should say.
Singing, acting, dancing, whatever. I mean, I pursued New York for many years. I lived in Manhattan 17 years. I did a lot of regional theater. And I still, when I was in Los Angeles, in the last few years, I did a show called Play It Cool, which I got nominated for an Ovation Award. That's now playing off Broadway. They didn't hire any of the LA people. They hired everyone from New York. And then I did a show called Bush is Bad, a great show, lots of fun. I got nominated for an LA Weekly Award from that. So I still pursue musical theater in Los Angeles. There's a huge musical theater community there.
So hopefully we can see you both on the boards and on deck.
Oh, for sure.
We've been speaking with Michael Shapiro. Next up, my conversation with author Joe Weston about his book, The Art of Respectful Confrontation. We'll be right back.